After driving 9 hours through a snowstorm to surprise my husband on his sister's wedding, I found out I wasn't invited. When I asked him why, he said, "You embarrass me." I took a deep breath and said, "Funny because you're about to be embarrassed in front of 200 guests." It was the kind of cold that made your lungs sting when you inhaled. One of those Midwest snowstorms that creeps in overnight and wrecks your entire day before you've even had your coffee. I should have waited. I should have checked the weather app again, taken a beat, thought it through. But I didn't. I drove anyway, 9 hours through snow and sleet and patches of black ice on I-94 to surprise my husband, Merrick, at his sister's wedding in Indianapolis. It wasn't just a sweet gesture or a last-minute whim. It was me, trying to show up for him, for his family, for us. He'd been distant lately, weird on the phone, always too busy, always rushing off to meetings, giving vague answers about the wedding when I asked if they needed help. "It's going to be small," he'd said. "Just close family." We'd been married for 6 years. I was close family. So I packed my bag, stopped by Target to grab a gift card because I didn't know what they'd registered for because I hadn't been told, and left early Friday morning from Milwaukee with nothing but my dress, a full tank of gas, and too much hope. Merrick didn't know I was coming. I'd called his mom the day before, out of politeness, and she'd said, "Oh, you're coming?" That pause. That long, awkward pause. It had sat in my chest the whole drive like a stone I couldn't swallow. But I told myself it was just nerves. They were busy. Weddings make everyone act weird. The church was one of those older ones with a stone facade and red double doors, right on the edge of downtown Indy. The parking lot was full, and the snow was falling in fat, slow flakes that looked like a movie set. I walked in, brushing snow off my coat, heart racing with the kind of nervous joy you get when you've done something impulsive and hope it pays off. I imagined him turning around, his face breaking into that slow, crooked smile he used to give me when I surprised him with coffee or showed up early to his office. I was already picturing the hug, the kiss, him saying, "You're crazy for doing this," and me laughing, saying, "Yeah, but you love me for it." Except, none of that happened. Because when I stepped into the vestibule and gave my name to the woman holding the guest list, her face went blank. "Sorry, I don't see you listed," she said politely. "That's okay. I'm Merrick's wife." Her eyes did a little flicker, like a twitch she tried to hide. All right, she glanced down at the clipboard again. "Why don't you wait right here for a second?" That stone in my chest? It dropped to my gut. A few minutes later, I saw Merrick walking toward me from down the hallway. He wasn't smiling. He didn't look surprised. He looked like someone who'd just seen a tow truck take their car. I laughed nervously. "You're not going to believe this weather," I said. I should have waited until morning, but I really wanted to. "What are you doing here?" he interrupted. I stopped, blinking. "What?" He didn't lower his voice. "You weren't supposed to come." "Why wouldn't I come? It's your sister's wedding. I'm your wife." His jaw tightened. He glanced behind him, then leaned in slightly. "You weren't invited." I just stared at him. "You're kidding." I didn't think it was a good idea. "Not a good idea?" I echoed. "Merrick, what the HLL are you talking about?" He rubbed the back of his neck, sighing. "I told them you had work. That it was complicated. I didn't want any drama." "Drama? What drama?" "I haven't even spoken to your sister in months." He looked away. And then I asked it quietly because I was almost afraid to hear the answer. "Why didn't you want me here?" He took a breath, and then he looked me right in the eyes and said it. "You embarrass me." It felt like time stopped. I was still holding my coat, my purse hanging off one shoulder, snow melting on my boots. "You, what?" He looked like he regretted saying it, but not enough to take it back. I stood there for another second, letting it settle, letting it burn. Then I took a deep breath, set my coat down on the bench, and I said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear, "Funny, because you're about to be embarrassed in front of 200 people." His eyes widened. "Don't make a scene, Amira." "Oh, you made the scene," I snapped. "You just didn't think I'd show up for it." I walked past him, right into the church. Heads turned. Some people stared. I spotted his mom, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't care. "I'm Amira," I said to no one and everyone. "I'm Merrick's wife. We've been married 6 years. Apparently, that doesn't qualify me as close family." A few gasps. Some murmurs. I saw his sister, Kara, standing near the altar in her dress. She turned to Merrick, who had followed me in, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Kara marched over to me. "You're not welcome here," she said through gritted teeth. "No kidding," I replied. "Believe it or not, I picked up on that when you guys planned an entire wedding and somehow forgot to send me an invitation. This isn't the time or place." Should have thought of that before excluding your brother's wife like she's some weird ex. Merrick stepped in again, trying to defuse it. Amira, please. Let's go outside. We'll talk. I shook my head. No. No more quiet rooms. No more, we'll talk about it later. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine. I turned and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't cry either, not yet. That came later, back in the car, while Ruby texted me asking what time I'd be home, and I sat in the driver's seat with the heat blasting, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from crumbling. I left the house at 5 in the morning. Ruby was still asleep when I tucked her in again, kissed her forehead, and whispered that I'd be back Sunday night. She mumbled something about cereal and rolled over, clutching her favorite dolphin plush like it owed her rent. I didn't tell her where I was going. I just left a note for my mom, who'd offered to watch her for the weekend while I had some time to myself. That's the line I'd fed everyone. That I needed a break. That I was going to a little Airbnb in Baraboo to write and decompress. I was going to Indianapolis. Merrick's sister Kara was getting married that weekend. Big deal wedding. Real fancy stuff. Black tie, white roses, 200 people. I wasn't invited. I know what you're thinking. What do you mean you weren't invited? I mean exactly that. No invitation. No, we decided to keep it small. No mention. No explanation. Just nothing. When I brought it up a few weeks before, Merrick had mumbled something like, "It's not like that. I didn't think you'd want to come. You're busy with school stuff, right?" I teach middle school English. I'm always busy. But that's never stopped me before. I tried to let it go at first. Told myself maybe there was some weird dynamic I didn't understand. Kara and I had never been super close, and their mom, Yvette, never really warmed up to me either. I wasn't refined, whatever the HLL that meant. I didn't come from the right zip code. I didn't go to the right college. I said yeah instead of yes, and I cut my own hair half the time because it calmed me down. But I was still Merrick's wife. For 6 years. That had to count for something. Except apparently it didn't. So I decided I was going anyway. Not for them. For him. To show him that even if his family didn't want me around, I was still willing to show up. To be there for his sister's big day. For his big day as her only sibling. I figured, if nothing else, it'd remind him I wasn't the enemy. I hit a snowstorm around Chicago. Whiteout conditions, wipers doing that irritating screech every other swipe, semis passing me like I was standing still. It should have stopped me. But I just kept thinking, he'll see me and it'll click. He'll realize I care. I pulled into the hotel parking lot just after 2 p.m. My hands were still shaking from the drive. Merrick hadn't answered my last 2 texts. I told myself he was busy. Tied up with family stuff. That he'd be thrilled when I walked in wearing that forest green wrap dress he liked so much, the one I wore on our 4th anniversary in Chicago, where we ate overpriced tapas and got tipsy on sangria in the middle of winter. I freshened up in the hotel bathroom. Added some eyeliner. Sprayed perfume I hadn't touched in months. I looked good. Tired, but good. The venue was just a mile away. Old stone church, the kind that made you feel like time had stopped the minute you stepped through the doors. I walked up in heels, the wind biting my legs, snow crunching beneath me. The usher at the front door smiled politely and asked for my name. Amira Bell. I'm the groom's sister-in-law. He scanned a list, hesitated. I'm not seeing you on here. That's okay, I said quickly. I'm Merrick's wife. His eyes flickered. Oh, sure. Go ahead, I guess. That flicker. That hesitation. I stepped into the church and immediately felt it, that pull in your stomach when you know something's wrong. Like walking into a room where everyone was just talking about you. People turned and looked, then turned away quickly. Some just stared. A few women from Merrick's side, cousins maybe, whispered behind their hands. I walked down the aisle halfway and spotted him near the altar. He was adjusting his tie, talking to someone from the bridal party. Then he turned. Our eyes locked, and the look on his face. It wasn't joy. Or even confusion. It was dread. I froze. My smile faltered. He was at my side in seconds, his hand gently touching my arm, his voice low. What are you doing here? I came to surprise you, I said. I thought it'd be. You can't be here. I blinked. What do you mean I can't be here? You weren't invited. I'm your wife. I know. He looked around, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching. This isn't the time. No, I said, stepping back. You don't get to say that. Why wasn't I invited, Merrick? I didn't think it was a good idea. Why? Because, he looked right at me. You embarrass me. I laughed. Out loud. It was either that or scream. You embarrass me, I repeated, like I needed to hear it again in my own voice. He winced. Please, Amira. Don't make a scene. I took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay. I walked past him, straight up to the front row where Yvette was seated in a silk suit and pearls, sipping champagne like it was water. Hi, Yvette, I said, smiling. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to let everyone know I made it. Drove through a snowstorm to surprise my husband. The entire room had gone quiet. Kara turned around, eyes wide. I looked at the crowd. In case you're confused, I'm Merrick's wife. Apparently, I wasn't invited because I'm an embarrassment. Merrick rushed up behind me. Amira, stop. No, you stop. You didn't even have the spine to tell me the truth. You lied. You hid me. Like I'm some mistake you outgrew. A woman in the back whispered, is that her? Yes, I said. It's me. The one who stayed behind to raise our daughter and pay our mortgage while he played charming single man in Indianapolis. I turned to Merrick, voice calm now. You can humiliate me all you want. But don't you ever tell our daughter her mother wasn't worth showing up for. And then I walked out. I didn't cry until I got to the car. Not because of the shame, but because somewhere deep inside me, I think I already knew. This wasn't about a wedding. This was about a marriage that had been unraveling thread by thread, and I was the only one still pretending it wasn't happening. I sat in the driver's seat for 15 full minutes before I could even start the car. My hands were shaking, and I wasn't cold anymore, just vibrating with this awful, electric energy that made me feel like I could scream or collapse. I wasn't sure which one would come out first. It wasn't just the embarrassment, or even the betrayal. It was the realization that all those small things I'd brushed off, the vague answers, the missed calls, the business trips that didn't add up, they weren't coincidences. They weren't stress or forgetfulness. They were deliberate. He'd been slowly cutting me out, and I hadn't noticed until the door had already closed behind me. I drove to the nearest Holiday Inn without thinking. My hands were still trembling when I gave the woman at the front desk my ID. She didn't say much, just handed me a key card and a small bottle of water. I must have looked like HLL. I thanked her and mumbled something about needing quiet. Inside the room, I peeled off my dress and laid it gently across the chair. I couldn't even bring myself to hang it up. It felt like it didn't belong to me anymore, like it was a costume from a play that had closed early. I stared at the ceiling for a while. The hum of the heater was the only sound in the room. My phone buzzed. Merrick, are you okay? I didn't answer. Another text came in 5 minutes later. Merrick, I didn't mean it like that. Can we talk? I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered, ready to type 1,000 different things. But I didn't send anything. Instead, I called Jules. She answered on the second ring. Hey, wait, aren't you supposed to be? I wasn't invited. What? I wasn't invited to the wedding. And when I showed up anyway, Merrick said I embarrass him. Silence. Then, slowly, I'm going to say this once. Do not go back to that house. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not ever, unless you have to get your stuff. I didn't cry. Not yet. But hearing her say that out loud, that this was real, not just some bad dream I was about to shake off, it landed heavy. Do you want me to come get you? She asked. No, I said. I just needed someone to hear it. I hear you, she said. Loud and clear. The next morning, I woke up at 6 without trying. Couldn't sleep more than 4 hours even if I wanted to. I stared at the ceiling again. Hotel ceilings always look the same, off-white, bumpy, impersonal. Like they're trying not to offend anyone. I got up, made the weak hotel coffee, and checked my phone. 6 missed calls. 3 voicemails. 10 texts from Merrick. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I couldn't hear his voice yet. I didn't trust myself not to scream or sob or both. The texts were mostly apologies. I panicked. You caught me off guard. I didn't want the family to be uncomfortable. Please talk to me. We owe each other that. I'm sorry. I sat on the edge of the bed and read each one again. Then again. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my mom. Told her I'd be home by evening and to give Ruby a big hug from me. She's fine, Mom said. She made a snowman with my neighbor's kid, and now she's watching Finding Nemo for the 8th time this week. I smiled faintly. Good. Mom paused. You okay? No. You want me to say anything to Ruby? I swallowed. No. Just tell her I'll be home soon. Back on the road, the snow had cleared, but the sky was still that heavy gray that makes you feel like the sun's never coming back. I kept the radio off the whole drive. Every few hours, my phone buzzed with a new message. He wasn't letting it go. So finally, somewhere outside Janesville, I pulled off the road and sent him one line. We'll talk in person. But not today. He replied instantly. Okay, just tell me when. Please. I'm so sorry, Amira. I didn't answer. Back at home, Ruby ran into my arms like I'd just returned from war. "Did you see Aunt Kara in her dress?" she asked, bouncing. "No," I said, crouching down to her level. "I didn't make it to the wedding, sweet pea." "Oh!" She frowned. "Why?" I paused. "Because sometimes grown-ups don't get invited to things, even if they should." She looked confused but nodded like she accepted it. "Kids are better at grace than we give them credit for." She showed me a drawing she made, us, standing in front of our house, and a sun with sunglasses smiling over us. I felt my throat tighten. I kissed her forehead. "I love it," I whispered. Merrick showed up at my mom's house the next evening. He didn't call first. I was out front, sitting on the porch with a mug of tea and the blanket Ruby always insists is magic. When I saw his car pull up, I didn't move. Just waited. He walked up slow, hands in his coat pockets. "Can we talk?" I stood and opened the door. "Let's go around back." Mom was inside with Ruby, and I didn't want voices carrying. We walked out to the little patio, stood under the porch light like two strangers meeting for the first time. He exhaled. "Amira, don't." He nodded. "Okay. You said I embarrass you," I said. "I didn't mean it that way. But you said it." I was overwhelmed. "My mom, Kara, they said things. They made me feel like if I brought you it would cause tension, and he paused. I wanted the day to go smoothly. So you left me behind to make them comfortable. I know how that sounds." "No," I said, sharper than I meant to. "You know exactly how that sounds. You chose your image over your wife." He looked away. "And you didn't just exclude me, Merrick. You made me invisible." He was quiet for a long time. "I've been struggling," he said. "With us. With everything. I didn't know how to talk about it. So you lied instead?" "I didn't want to hurt you." Too late. He finally met my eyes. "I messed up." I nodded. "Yeah, you did." I let the silence stretch. "I don't know what I want to do yet," I said. "But I know what I don't want. And that's a husband who's ashamed of me in public and apologizes in private." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I turned toward the house. "I'll call you when I'm ready to talk about next steps. Until then, don't show up here again." He stood there for a second like he was going to say something. But then he nodded, turned, and walked back to the car. The first few days after that conversation were weird. Not quiet exactly, but suspended, like the pause between lightning and thunder. Everything had already cracked open. Now I was just waiting for the sound to catch up. Merrick didn't text. Didn't call. I think he knew better. Or maybe he was just giving me space the way people say they will after they've already taken too much from you. I spent more time with Ruby. She started asking questions. "Is Daddy mad at you?" "No, baby." "Then why does he live somewhere else?" I wanted to give her the truth. But how do you explain emotional betrayal to a 7-year-old? How do you tell her that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most make you feel small in rooms full of people? So I said the only thing I could say. Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings, and they don't always handle them the right way. She seemed to accept that. Then, 2 nights later, while Ruby was asleep and Mom was watching a movie in the next room, I pulled out Merrick's iPad. It had been left at our house back in December when he went to visit his parents. I'd shoved it in a drawer and forgotten about it. But now, something was tugging at me. Not just curiosity, something heavier. Like the kind of dread that already knows what it's going to find. The iPad was still logged into his iCloud. I didn't even have to guess the passcode. His messages were synced. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the Messages app, half praying it would be nothing, some old conversations with coworkers, or maybe a grocery list he'd shared with himself. But what I found made my breath catch in my throat. There were texts from a number labeled only as K. It wasn't Kara. I scrolled. "K, you were amazing last night." "Merrick, I needed that. You always know how to reset my brain." "K, don't forget your jacket this time. I like how it smells." Photos. Late night messages. Voice memos. Some were months old. It wasn't just Kara's wedding. This had been going on for a while. He had another woman. Not just a fling. This was consistent. Familiar. Comfortable. I dropped the iPad like it burned. Stood up. Paced. Sat back down. Everything inside me itched to throw the damn thing across the room. But I didn't. I took screenshots. Dozens. Sent them to myself and backed them up to a flash drive. Then I turned off the iPad, put it back in the drawer, and washed my hands like I'd touched something toxic. I didn't sleep that night. At one point I laid on the floor in my room, staring at the ceiling, the way I used to do in college when everything felt too heavy to be held by a bed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there and thought, so this is the truth. It was never just about the wedding. It was never just about not wanting drama. He wasn't ashamed of me because I was too loud, or too real, or not polished enough. He was ashamed because he was cheating. And if I showed up, he'd have to pretend to love me in front of people who probably already knew the truth. The next morning, I called Jules. I didn't even say hello. I checked his iPad. She paused. And? There's someone else. Like, really someone else. Jesus. I don't know what to do. She sighed. You do know. You're just trying not to admit it yet. I sat in silence. Okay, I said finally. Okay. I made a folder. It was petty maybe, but it helped. I labeled it, for the lawyer. Inside it went the screenshots. His messages to this K. The voice memo he'd accidentally recorded while mumbling something about getting away and can't keep doing this. I hadn't said the word divorce out loud yet, but now it was hanging there waiting. Later that week, Merrick asked if he could take Ruby to dinner. I didn't want to say yes, but I didn't want to punish her either. I said okay and packed a small overnight bag just in case she ended up at his rental. He picked her up at 5 on the dot, standing outside the house like he was afraid to come in. She ran out and hugged him. I stayed at the door, arms crossed. He looked up at me. You look tired. I didn't respond. She's got school tomorrow, I said flatly. I know. He didn't bring up anything else. And when they drove off, I sat in my car and watched them go, heart in my throat, wondering how long I'd been trying to hold a marriage together with silence. 2 days after that, Yvette called me. Yep. His mom. She said my name like she was trying it out for the first time. Amira. I know things are difficult right now. Difficult? I echoed. I just think it's important not to make any rash decisions. I laughed, cold and hollow. Yvette, your son cheated on me. I found his messages. There's nothing rash about protecting myself. She was quiet for a beat. Well, things aren't always black and white. In this case, they're text messages I snapped. From another woman. To your married son. During your daughter's wedding weekend. She made a noise like she was offended. I'm not calling for your approval, I added. I'm calling because I want you to know the next time you try to pretend like I don't exist, I'll be the one writing the story. And I hung up. I don't usually hang up on people. But that day, I didn't care.